The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, boarders, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who prides himself in avoiding soggy bottoms. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing fine. You got me on this one. I thought I knew what you're talking about, so the only soggy bottoms I know are the Soggy Bottom Boys, and that's from Oh Brother Huerto.
Right.
I don't think this is in reference to that.
This is not in reference to that.
What is it? One of those baking shows?
It is one of those baking shows.
Okay.
The Great British Baking Show, to be exact. And some people are probably going to give me a hard time because Mary Berry is no longer one of the judges. But, you know, Prue is great. But, you know, Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry were really where it's at. So, you know.
Okay.
And that's what they would always check for when, like, you'd bake a tart or something. They want to ensure that you did not have a soggy bottom.
Okay, sure.
Because no one likes a soggy bottom. Plus, you know, with a lot of the things that they do, especially like in England, like when they're making pies and things like that, you know, in the United States, pies typically are almost always sweet. Well,
Yes.
there's a lot of savory pies. So you have a lot of meats with juices and things like that. So it leads to soggy bottoms.
Fair enough.
And no
There's
one
a
likes
reason why no one likes British food.
Wow. I've
Meat
actually had
and dessert.
I've had some very excellent British food. I went to England once. The food was good.
I know, I'm kidding. I've been to England and had very good food there.
So, but you're right. It doesn't have the reputation of having excellent food. But when I was there, the food was quite delectable.
It's known as bland, I think, right? People always call it bland food.
Right.
Like anything in like that part of Europe, like Ireland, Scotland, all that kind of stuff is like known for bland food.
I feel like that is probably the stereotype we place
Or
on
the
it. Yes.
reputation.
The
maybe not known
reputation.
for.
Yeah.
The
That
reputation.
would probably be the appropriate word more than stereotype. The reputation. Yes.
Yes.
That it has. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed the food when I was there. So I think there's also probably because, you know, I grew up in Minnesota. So I think there's probably some relation to, you know, casserole, hot dish or casserole, depending on where you're from. But just that idea of like meat, potatoes, pasties, all of that good stuff. So, you know.
Yes. You said it. Pasties. That's the one that throws everyone off.
Well, you know, had to throw that in there every once in a while. My aunt and uncle actually own a bakery, and they make pasties there, and they're quite delicious. So
Nice.
yeah, that I got in a lot of trouble though when I was a kid because being, you know, a kid, I liked ranch dressing on everything, so I would put ranch dressing on my pasties, and my aunt and uncle got very upset with me. So probably rightfully so.
I bet.
But anyway, but hey, this isn't a food podcast. This is a gaming podcast. So thanks so much for joining us this week. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out all the wonderful things Josh posts over on the Instagram, also Board with VG. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvg. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. We also take those long form communications, boardwithvg@gmail.com. And finally, that hashtag boardwithvg on all the social medias. So we could kind of check out what fun things you're doing, whether it be gaming or bowling. That's cool too. So we appreciate everyone who uses that hashtag. And whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, we'd really love it if you give us a stellar rating there. That's whether you're downloading us from the PSVG feed or the standalone Board with Video Games feed. As a reminder, PSVG is on Patreon, and we're really happy and thrilled with all the support that you all have given there thus far. If you'd like to monetarily support what we do, you can find us there, patreon.com/PSVG. But the most important thing is just that you listen and maybe share us. That sounds odd, doesn't it? Share us.
Share us
Share
with
us.
your family and friends.
I just really thought about maybe share what we do. Share us. Anyway, we just appreciate everyone who listens. And hey, put in a good word for us to your friends. Speaking of the Patreon giveaway this month was sponsored by Board with Video Games. And we have a winner, but I cannot announce the winner yet because I haven't actually been able to make contact with the person who won yet. That is not the winner's fault. For those of you who don't know, Donnie, who runs PSVG, is very wrapped up with Super Bowl things right now because his town is hosting the Super Bowl and he works in emergency management for that town. So he's a little busy right now, but he's the only one who has access to all that wonderful contact information. So very soon that person will be notified that they won. And once I have actually communicated with them, then I will announce it. But rest assured, that person has a winner has been drawn and I know who it is. I just need to actually be able to communicate with them before I announce it.
I know who it is too.
You do.
We're not telling.
So that's enough of the housekeeping. Josh, what has been some of the news in the world of tabletop?
Oh, well, we get some, we'll call it the hybrid of our podcast. We all start with some digital board gaming news. So Dire Wolf Digital is probably one of the only other digital companies besides Asmodee making digital board games. Typically on the App Store, but you'll also see things on Steam as well. So they announced a handful of new, they're not new IPs, they're new IPs to digital board gaming. So we're going to see Mage Knight, which has a huge following. They just came off of a huge Kickstarter that was like the all-encompassing Mage Knight collection, which people have been going crazy over. So we're going to get Mage Knight digitally. We're going to get probably one of the biggest games from last year. We're going to get Root digitally, which is awesome because I didn't know there's so much you can do in Root and factions and stuff. I think it's perfect for like computer controlled characters. That way you can play it with less people and get that whole experience. Something my wife texted me and was very excited about. Sagrada is coming to digital at some point this year, which is great. I'm excited for people to get their hands on this that maybe don't have the group size to play these games. Yellow and is it Yangtze?
Yellow and Yangtze?
Yellow and Yangtze. It's a sequel to Tigris and Euphrates, or kissing cousin to Tigris and Euphrates, something like that. Very popular game by Reiner Knizia. I haven't played it, so I don't know too much about it. We have Wings of Glory, which is a dog fighting aerial combat game coming digitally, and Raiders of the North Sea, which is huge. Renegade Game Studios' biggest game of last year. People love this game to death, so I'm excited to be able to get to play it. It's going to be on phones, tablets, and PC. There's already some images out. It looks awesome, and that will be Q1 of this year, so that's soon. That's great news. I don't know if you can hear my son in the background, but he's in his crib going blah 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 blah.
He's really excited about Raiders of the North Sea.
So what do you think? Are you excited for any of these titles?
I am. I'm really excited for Root. It's a game I haven't had the chance to play yet, but it's very regularly at the top of my list of games I want to play. So that is for me the one that is jumping out to me the most as far as, I would definitely look at picking that up. Otherwise, like all of these are really quality games though. So there's nothing here that I'm like, maybe not this one. Like all of these I would definitely consider. And Raiders of the North Sea, again, especially since it's coming so soon, is definitely a game that, I would definitely see myself playing or investigating more at the very least to see kind of, is it something that I'm going to want to sit down and play for a few minutes or a few hours? How is that all going to work? Here's my question for you, sir. Number one, we'll start with just one question. Do you think, and I know this is a conversation topic that has happened in the past, I don't necessarily know about amongst us, but when games companies decide to do these apps or the digital versions of their games, depending on how you want to look at this. Do you think these are aimed at people who already own the game, people who they think, if exposed, would potentially order the actual physical game, or people that they think there's no way in the world this person's ever going to buy the physical game? So this way we can at least still get them potentially interested in and or playing our product.
I think, all right, so I'm going to use Civilization as an example. The very popular PC game. There is a board game of it, but they just recently released Civilization 6 on Switch and on phones, and they were charging like $25 on phones. That is a company that doesn't expect someone to buy their app and then buy something else that they make. So they charge you $25 or more. On the Switch, it's like $60. I think with these companies, board games are coming out for $3, $4, $5, $6. I think that the idea is you play this game, you love this game, you buy the physical board game. I think that's their thought. But every scenario you mentioned is plausible, like, and probably happens. For me, I own a lot of apps of games I already own because I get to play them on break at work, or I get to play them way more often because there's no setup and takedown. So it has that added benefit. But like, say if Tokaido came out on the App Store and it was $30, I wouldn't be buying it, even though I already own the game. Or if I didn't own the game, that's a big risk. So I think that that's something that, for me as a board gamer, I'm not going to invest. If Root comes out at $15, I probably won't get it, but it's possible. Like, they could charge $15 because their game is that popular. It sells for like $90.
What price? And obviously, for all these, is the value of something is how much you're willing to pay for it, and it's going to change from person to person, etc. But what do you think is the sweet spot for these games? Because like Direwolf obviously has like lanterns and things like that they've done fully digital. But I think when we think, or at least when I think of Direwolf, I think of Clank, which the app is just a companion app. It enhances the board game experience. Yeah. I don't think of Lanterns and the other one I'm blanking on right now. Fuse. Is that what else that they did?
That's on the app.
Oh, and Lotus.
And Lotus. Yeah, there's
Lotus.
4 in there.
Yep. So, yep. So, I don't necessarily think of those. I think much more of Clank. So where do you think the sweet, like, I couldn't even tell you how much Lanterns is digitally. I have no idea. But where do you think the sweet spot is, especially like, Mage Knight, if it has all the content? Like, that's a ton of content that if you're buying the board game would be super expensive.
Yeah. I think we paid $3.99 for Lanterns when we got it. But I mean, I paid $10 for Super Mario Run. So if you
look at, a lot of people said that was way too much.
Yeah, and I agree. But I bought it because of the licensing issue, like, because it's Mario. If you look at Steam, so here's the tricky part, right? Like, these games are all coming out also on PC.
Right.
If you go to Steam, I think like Small World 2, which is only on tablets and Steam, is like $13.99 or $14.99. But you get a lot of, it's a big game also. So like, I could see a game like Mage Knight being $20, but when they have to make a decision if this game is going to be the same on phones and PC and tablet, or if it's going to be different, because you can't get Small World 2 on your phone.
Right.
So it depends on how much work they're putting into the app and if they're going to make separate apps. So I think if you're looking at like a Google Play Store or Apple like phone game, I think like $10 is a sweet spot, because I think like Terra Mystica is like $12. So some of the higher games are up there. I think $10 is a sweet spot. And you can still buy DLC. Like, they don't have to put Mage Knight and all the expansions out.
Right.
It's like Potion Explosion. I bought the DLC for it for like $1. So if they're still getting a couple bucks extra for expansions, they're still making good money. But I think Steam, you can push $20 or more and get that's like safe value, because I think it's just associated with better quality. Not that it is necessarily.
Right.
But you're associating as like a PC game instead of a mobile game.
Right. Because I was going to say, do you think is it kosher or okay for them to take a game, put it on phones, and charge $7, and then have the exact same game on Steam, but it's $19.99.
I think that happens. I don't like it, but I think that does happen with games, because they know like that sometimes they can get away with stuff like that. It also happens with like bad timing on sales. Like you could have a great sale week for Asmodee games on Google Play, and I don't have them for Apple Store, and vice versa. So I think that stuff happens too. But if it's like misleadingly like on launch, Mage Knight, same game, $10 more expensive on PC, I mean, that's not good. Like I don't know what else to say. Like it's just it's bad marketing, and if people notice that, then it's going to be bad for the company. Why even risk it?
Oh no, definitely understand that. So of these, it's 5 games that they announced, right?
Yeah.
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. I can count. I'm sure that was exciting for the listeners. So these 6 they say are coming this year, along with others, because they say here's just some of what's coming up with more announcements to follow.
Yes.
So but in the statement it clearly says releasing over the coming months and years. So it sounds like all of these are going to be out in 2019. Starting with, it seems like Raiders of the North Sea. Are there other games you can think of that you would like Direwolf to put their touch on? Because like when you look at this group of games, this is a good group of games, but it's a pretty eclectic mix, right? It's not all from one company. It's not all one style of game. Like these are things that from like a UX design standpoint, like you couldn't like, is there some things you could take from one to the other? Sure, obviously, but these aren't the same type of games that they're doing. These are a pretty eclectic group. So is there anything else that you would love to see Direwolf put their little fingers into and bring to the digital world?
So something that I've always wanted that kind of came out, but not the way. Well, so Legendary DXP came out, and it was like this very expensive version of like a non-licensed version of Legendary Marvel. Mm-hmm. I've always wanted Legendary Marvel to come out. The way that they, I played you can do like a free trial, and you can try like one deck out of all the decks they offer. Mm-hmm. They did a good job at the end, like implementing the game. I thought it was pretty easy to play, knowing how to play Legendary Marvel. If I'm ignoring the fact that Upper Deck already put out games and has the licensing stuff, if Direwolf could do like Legendary Marvel, or maybe like Dominion, like a deck builder kind of game, or something similar to that. Like I already have Ascension. I'm pretty happy with that.
Right.
And they do a good job with that, with the expansions. Maybe like a Mystic Veil or something along those lines. I would like to see because I'm not currently playing a deck builder on my phone. So I would like to see something like that. I'm looking around at my games, and I'm like, okay, that is an app. Yeah, that's an app. Okay, that's also an app. Maybe Stone Age would be pretty awesome. That's a great game.
Is there a Stone Age app?
Not that I know of. Maybe on the PC, but I don't think there's one on the phones. Or even a game like Shadows over Camelot would be cool, because they have Lords of Waterdeep. So if they can do Lords of Waterdeep, they can do Shadows over Camelot.
Right.
Stone Age, the board game. Let's see. There is, and it's $7.
I thought there was. I was like, I feel like there is. I could be wrong, but I thought there was.
Campfire Creations, it's $7. So there's an example of a different price and it's very poorly reviewed.
Well, maybe then
it's below a 4.
Oof. Maybe then they could polish it up a little bit, or create a newer version to take care of the concerns folks have.
Yeah, I mean, like Terra Mystica is $10. Istanbul is $7. That just came out recently.
Right.
What about you? Is there a dream game that you want?
I think for me, I just really still want to see Plaid Hat get their games digital somehow, and I feel like Direwolf, with how pretty the things that they make look, I think a lot of the games from Plaid Hat have excellent art and an excellent feel to them. Like they create a good, cool world. They build worlds well. So I think just anything, even like Guardians, I think would be a really good fit to come digitally. I think that'd be a great option.
Cool.
Awesome.
Okay, let's move on to the next story. This is an interesting story. So people here probably don't know the name Dobble, But if you've ever been into a Target or Barnes & Noble, you probably know the game Spot It, which this is the British version of Spot It. Now, Doppel in the UK is very popular. In fact, last year at the British Toy Industry Awards, it was named Game of the Year. That being said, Asmodee UK announced that Doppel has become the best-selling game of 2018, which is crazy. No? Like, they sold 1 million copies of
I know, right?
Doppel, which is Spot It. If you can't picture it, there's these small discs with a bunch of images on it. Like this one has a spider, yin yang, a dog, a cactus, piece of cheese, a hand. And I believe the premise of the game is you have to see who can spot a certain image the fastest between the 2 to 8 players that are playing. It's a very family-friendly game. It's ages 6+, and it plays in under 15 minutes. So I'm guessing that's the appeal, because I'm not trying to come down on Doppel or Spot It, because good for them. It was never a game that I looked at and wanted. But maybe because I'm out of the party game craze. Like, I used to play party games a lot when we were all like socially drinking, and we don't necessarily do that anymore. This game's probably hilarious if you're socially drinking or playing with children. But they also have different titles of the game, so you can get a bunch of different themed versions of the game. It's not just one generic set, which is cool. Adds variety. Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about this crazy story where a small party game sold 1 million copies in the UK?
So part of the reason I was really excited to talk about this was because, number one, I had no idea what the game Doppel was. And once you said it's the game Spot It in the United States, I went and looked it up. I have no idea what the game Spot It is. No clue. So to me, I find it fascinating that being someone or being people, like, you obviously knew what the game was, but I like to think that I'm decently knowledgeable about the hobby of board games and the hot games and like what the big things are. And I had never heard of this game before. I had never seen it. And I Googled it while you were talking, and sure enough, you can buy it everywhere. Like, it's easily purchasable. My local Target has a whole bunch of them. My local Walmart has a whole bunch of them. And I had I don't ever remember seeing this game anywhere. And I think it's just kind of fascinating to me that how big of blind spots we can have in certain areas of our specific hobbies. Like party games, I almost never play them. I don't think poorly about them. I rarely can get 4 people together to play games. So The idea of playing party games is just something that rarely ever happens. And most of the people that I'm with or that I would hang out with socially, when it comes to wanting to play party games or games as a group, none of them are really into board games. So right away, everyone just wants to play Cards Against Humanity. Like, that's the first thing everybody wants to do. Yeah. And I kind of feel the same about like war games. Like, I have never played like a real legit deep crunchy war game. I just haven't. I know a bit about them. Like, I know that they exist. I can name a few of them, but it's just a part of the hobby that I have really no knowledge about. And that to me is just so fascinating that you can have a game that sells 1 million copies in the UK, and I have no idea what this game is.
Let me tell you the versions that they have. Maybe some of the ones I tell you will lead you to why they may have sold so many. So there's Doppel Classic, there's Doppel Kids, there's Waterproof Doppel Beach, which comes in its own Doppel Beach bag, Double the Fun, Doppel Junior, and we have Doppel 1, 2, 3, Doppel Animals, and then Star Wars Doppel, Disney Princesses Doppel, and Cars 3 Doppel. So you might have a little bit of a hint on where some of their sales. I'm not trying to take their sales away from them, but they have the Disney license. That's
they do.
Pretty big.
That is pretty big. But still, the fact that they sold that many copies in a country of that size is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And Doppel Cars has Asmodee's logo on it. I don't see Asmodee on the rest of them.
Gotcha. I think, and then in the US, though, it's under Blue Orange in the US, yes?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So big ups to them. Like I said, for me, this was just an eye opener about how much more knowledgeable I still need to become about certain aspects and areas of the industry. Is there any part of board gaming that you feel that is kind of a blind spot for you, sir?
Yeah, you kind of listed it. Any miniatures and wargaming, and then I know just a little teeny tiny bit about role playing games, but not even close to what it encompasses. And as much as I used to know about Magic, pretty much any TCG stuff and tournament stuff, it's way out of my wheelhouse, which is crazy because there's so much of it at conventions. Like, you just kind of see it everywhere. Wargaming and miniatures are way too intimidating for me to even want to try.
It is. It's something that I feel like I would be horrible at.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, congratulations, Asmodee UK and Dobble, for selling 1 million copies.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Good job. I'm going to sneak in a quick story that wasn't in our list. Yesterday, Wonderforge announced an announcement. If you go on Instagram, my wife was kind enough to share with me. They created a Disney Villainous page for the game, which wasn't out when the game came out. But if you listen, you know how much I enjoy that game. And they teased an image of 3 new villains being announced this week, or available this week, or something like that. So they removed the pieces from the lineup, but they kept the reflection, so we can clearly see there's like a teal blue piece, a pink or purple piece, and a red piece, it looks like. So there's been a lot of speculation abound. So that'll probably come out before this episode drops, because we're recording on a Sunday. So by the time you hear this Thursday, that info might already be out. So, I mean, checking them out on Instagram, Disney Villainous, and see if you can make some guesses. Tweet us your guesses, because there's a lot of potential villains that could be coming out. Do you have any guesses based on those colors?
I'm looking at them. I'm looking at the picture right now. I'm thinking is maybe Hades potentially, because of the purple.
People are guessing that for blue, actually.
Oh, for blue. Oh, I guess that would make more sense for that. Yes. Maybe then the Evil Queen.
Yep. That's people are guessing that for red.
And then, Jafar?
He's already in it.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I'm actually looking at the Jafar piece. That's why I said it. I was like, oh, gosh.
Well, I'll tell you the popular guess is the person on the back of the rule book.
Okay. Who is, right, remind me. I don't even remember who's on the back of the rule book.
Cruella de Vil. Her
really?
on the back of the rule book.
Okay. Well, that would make sense then.
But it could be anyone. It might not be her, because they kind of, people already know she's eventually going to probably be in it. So they might not drop her right away. And it looks like they're going to release all 3 in one. So like a villain pack, which would be pretty cool. So it's like an expansion instead of buying them individually. Kevin Austin was saying he was glad that it looks like they'll come out as a pack and not individually, which I never thought they would do, but it was a possibility.
Right. And that would be cool. I mean, having a nice pack, a 3-pack to get just kind of immediately put in, that'd be nice for sure. Yeah. I need to get back to this game and play it more.
Yeah, I really enjoy this game. So, cool. Okay. So I just wanted to drop that in real quick, because we have one more doozy of I would call it a topic, not necessarily a story, but we have a new Kickstarter out. It is working with a very popular license by IDW Games, future publishers of Metal Gear Solid board game.
Indeed.
And it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures Cityfall. Now, it's also more than Cityfall, so I don't know why they titled it that. They went out with a goal of $200,000. Do you know the info before I tell you?
Me?
I'm going to have you guess if you don't know.
Oh, I don't. I know some of it, but I don't know all of it.
All right, their goal was $200,000. Mm-hmm. They have 11 days to go.
Okay.
They're currently sitting at 2,244 backers. What do you think what do you think they're at right now?
So they have how many backers? 2,000?
2,244.
2,244 backers. They wanted $200,000. I am going to say that they are at about $350,000.
Okay, you're only 100,000 off. They're at $453,000.
Okay.
Now, let's see how this works. So, when you're looking at this campaign, the first thing you notice is 4 boxes on the screen for
That's a lot of game boxes.
potentially one. Well, that is a lot of game boxes. So you have City Fall, you have Change and Constant, and then you have what appears to be 2 separate character miniature boxes. One has like variant Ninja Turtles, and one has the ever popular Usagi Ninjimbo. I always forget his name. The rat.
Yep.
I forget his last name.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Before I go over the prices, I will tell you, if you back this, you get a bonus 70 free digital comics for backing.
Oh, that's cool.
That's pretty impressive.
That's really cool.
So here we go. The first pledge. Change is constant. You get the Change is constant set, and then you get 1 character box. $125 gets you essentially half of the Kickstarter.
Oh, wait, that's
You
only
can
half
also
of it?
choose. Yeah, you can also choose the City Fall and Deviations box for $125. If you want them all, it's $250. So you don't get a bonus for doing them all together. Same price if you add them together. Except you do get a few Kickstarter exclusive figures. So you do get a little bit of extra stuff. And you get all the stretch goals. There was a cool $500 Kevin Eastman sketch bundle. That would have been pretty awesome. That did sell out. Bless you. But no one could hear you sneeze.
Nobody
I
could.
saw it, though. That was just a reflex. So if you look at this, it's pretty standard for what we've been seeing with Kickstarters recently. A lot of miniatures. Like a lot. The art is nice. There's some characters that must be from the new series that I'm not very familiar with. But you can get 6 players if you get one of the expansions. So it's typically 1 to 4 players, but you can get a 6-player edition, which is nice. Nice high production value, but what do you think? Like, this is just, in my opinion, another giant Kickstarter game where you're not necessarily getting the full game from the basic pledge. And we talk about this kind of being something we've seen the norm of. Do you think this is something that just like Ninja Turtles diehard fans are going to jump on? Or are people just kind of like, I know that if I want to get this game, I kind of just have to pick one or the other and settle with that because I can't afford the whole thing? Where do you stand on this whole cash grab? Is it a cash grab? Is it a cash grab?
I don't necessarily know if it's a cash grab, because I think obviously games cost money to produce, and obviously IDW is a company; they need to turn a profit to stay in business. I wonder, because here's kind of where I go to, because that's a lot of money, right? $250 if you want the complete package, and that's not the only game we've had in the last year that we've talked about of like our games getting too expensive. It seems to be a regular conversation that we have on the show. Obviously, there's enough people who can afford the games, because these type and expensive games of this cost levels continue to come out and continue to get funded. You know, in some ways, it seems like even more often than they used to that they're getting funded. Maybe not to the same levels that they were getting in the past, but they're still successfully getting funded. I feel like, isn't this like IDW's like 3rd Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Kickstarter in like the last year and a half? It seems like. Yeah,
it's definitely their 3rd Ninja Turtles game. So it might be their 3rd Kickstarter as well.
Yeah, but part of me says maybe the reason they have it split is because they recognize that from the production of what they want to produce, that $250 is a huge ask for people to buy a game. So by putting it into 2 parts, this is actually, in essence, lowering the cost of entry, because it could have just been, it's $250. Instead, you have 2 separate $125 options that, since it's based on the comics, if you are, a comic fan of that original run, you can pick what is more important to you or where you want to go with that. That's the positive spin I could choose to look at, that they're trying to reduce the cost of entry. Here would be, I guess, my question to return to you, sir, because there's no way in the world I'm going to back this. I saw this and was like really super interested, and then I saw that I didn't even scroll far enough down. I just saw it was $125, and I was like, no, I'm out.
Yeah.
But do you think it's better? Because obviously this game is funded. Would it be okay, or should companies, when they're releasing games of this magnitude, release an option where there are cardboard standees instead of miniatures, where all the other stuff is the same, right? You still have the boards, you have the tokens, you have the custom dice, you have all of those things. But instead of all these minis, you just have some standees, and that the price for that game is $50 or $60. And then you can get the entire thing for $100.
Yeah, that's what Druid City Games did with Tidal Blades, and they're doing with the other game they have out now, which the name escapes me. But they do the deluxe set, which comes with the miniatures, which is like $10, $20, $30 more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Tidal Blades one was like $40 more expensive. But that's where you're getting all the miniatures if you really want them, or deluxe game accessories. I mean, yeah, it's to the company's discretion. Like, I just feel like, do you feel like when you looked at this, because I also looked at this when it came out, do you think if the game was $60 or $50, you would have considered buying it?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I guess the bigger question is like, are they losing out on all those potential people where if they did just do standees, I know production and manufacturing costs money, but that's what's covered by these fees.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, you have that battle, right? So even like you're a backer and you're like, okay, I can back this game for $125. It comes with these awesome miniatures and these deluxe spinners for damage, or I can spend $60 on plastic standees and damage tokens instead. Would I do that? Or do I look at, and like, imagine you're this Kickstarter, you're IDW, and you have these people on the hook for $60, right? But every stretch goal email they get is like, hey, look, new minis. Hey, look, new minis. And then maybe you convert those $60 people to the $125 pledge 2 weeks into your campaign. Like, I feel like that's a spot where you could get more buyers, but obviously they doubled their pledge goal. So, they maybe just don't need to do that.
Right. And that's, I think, kind of where, I go to like they funded, like, do they need to do these other things? Clearly the answer is no. They clearly don't need to do the other things. And I'm looking through this Kickstarter now, and this stuff looks really great. Like the minis, the sculpts look awesome. I'm really interested. I really want to see people paint these things because they look really cool. And they're doing some awesome stuff. Like, clearly they don't necessarily need to do those less expensive versions of the game. But I just think of like some of my favorite games, right? Like the game I talk about all the time, Dead of Winter. It has standees for the characters. Would that game be totally awesome with minis? It would be absolutely amazing with minis. It would look awesome. But because of how the game is done, and because of the world that they built, and because of the mechanisms in the game, you still feel super immersed. Like, you still feel like you're in that game and playing that game. And I think you would probably feel like that for this game too, right? Like the mechanisms and everything with how entrenched this world is, I feel like you could still really get in it. And I do think it's disappointing now that I read this, that if you get just one of the $125 levels, you don't get any of the stretch goals.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so the only way to get the stretch goals that are unlocked is if you jump in at the $250 level. And when you look at it, there's 1,647 backers at the $250 level. And the 125 ones combined have a total of
89
backers.
Yeah.
Total. So really,
those people had to settle. They want the game and they had to settle on what they could afford.
Yeah. And you know what? This probably sounds like us trying to be like, oh, woe is us. Woe is the person trying to buy a hobby product, No,
like I think we covered it. Like, we talked about what's out of our wheelhouse. Like, I don't have experience with these type of miniature games. Maybe I'm just missing out.
Right. Maybe
I don't know what I'm missing. Maybe I just think it's too much for what it is because I'm not in on the miniatures scene. And maybe if I'm like, maybe I would have spent $400 on the Batman game if I was really playing miniatures. Maybe I wouldn't have all the board games I have, and I would just have like 7 miniatures games,
Right.
like Kingdom Death Monsters and Batman. That would be all my games.
Yeah. And those things look awesome. Like they're really cool. They have an awesome table presence. Like it's really, really neat. And I do feel like in some ways, I'm sure many listeners think we're just belly aching about things, but it is, I honestly, I do get a little bit disappointed when I see a game like this and I'm like, yeah, this game looks cool. I'd really like to play it. It's just not in my wheelhouse as far as funds go right now, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. I'm in the same boat.
And granted, you can say that all the time, right? If the game was $60, there's going to be people that's going to be too much. If it was $40, there's going to be a group of people who want it, and that's too much. Like I would 100% understand that. I just $250 for a game is whew.
Yep, I hear you.
So
that's it for board game news.
awesome. Well, we'll move on to some video game news, and in a story that is probably surprising to nobody. Couple new games have announced some cross-platform play, of course, minus the PlayStation. So Wargroove, despite what people think, that is not a Nintendo exclusive, Wargroove and Paladins have announced that cross-platform play is coming to both of those games. It sounds like Wargroove will have it when it launches on February 1st. Paladins, I think, in their next patch is going to be releasing. But only Xbox, PC, Switch, no PS4 for those games. Now, we talked about just a couple of weeks ago how Rocket League was added to the PS4 crossplay beta program. So there's currently 2 games in the program, Fortnite and Rocket League. What do you think it's going to take, Josh, for games like Wargroove and Paladins to become crossplay on PS4? Is it only a matter of time that eventually PlayStation will say like, yep, it's out of beta and things can be crossplay? Or do you think it's always going to be a very strict curated list? What do you think the future for crossplay holds with PS4?
Well, I think we all know how tough betas can be. So I'm sure Sony's just having a real tough time with the beta.
We'll talk about betas more later.
Eventually, when they figure out how to use a beta and get their beta stress tests done, they'll have all their games will be crossplay. I'm kidding, obviously. I don't know what it's going to take. It's ultimately a business decision for Sony. And if they don't really feel like they're losing business, they don't ever have to do it. The problem, we won't see it until they start seeing it affect them on the bottom line. And supposedly, according to the numbers that we saw, Xbox sold more consoles than PlayStation last month. I still don't know that I believe that, but I mean, I should, right? Because it's a report that was sent out online. But do I think that it's because of crossplay? No, but it could be. Like, I don't know enough to be able to make an educated guess on that. It probably isn't, but who knows? So if Sony starts losing money, then yeah, they're going to push faster to get crossplay out, whatever it is that's slowing them down. But we've talked about Sony and crossplay for a while, and I think it all comes back to the fact that Sony doesn't have to do it right now. Like, they're on the top of, well, Xbox and Sony right now. There's no... I still don't see a lot of pressure on Twitter for that. I don't hear people screaming. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. But it seems like the only people giving them a tough time are Xbox people, my people. And sometimes it's like directed in jest, like as a joke, but a lot of times it's just people being mean on the internet, which is what the internet is. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you think like, what's the push that Sony needs? Do they need a push? Are they just going to do it?
I think that before they announce their next generation of consoles, crossplay will be implemented on PS4. Because
I think it will pass over to the new generation.
Yes, because I think they see that Microsoft's going to do it next gen. Nintendo's all on board with it, and I would like to think, and maybe I'm wrong, I would like to think they see the writing on the wall, that they hopefully, even though they definitely have some hubris right now with, over 90 million consoles in the wild, and they're skipping E3 and doing these other things. I would like to hope they recognize the follies of their past, right? And that they're not going to come out like when they announced the PS3 and be like, get a second job. It's enough. If you want it bad enough, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they will. Who knows? But I feel like they hopefully remember how important the PS4 launch was for them because of Xbox's missteps. And they know that the next Xbox launching well has as much to do with what Xbox does as it does with what PlayStation does. So, there was rumored specs that leaked not too long ago that show, the higher end Xbox is going to be significantly more powerful than the new PlayStation. But so you'll have a high end Xbox, you'll have the PlayStation, and then you'll have like the low end Xbox that's streaming. And who knows if those specs are real? Who knows where that'll sit out? But PlayStation has to be cognizant of the fact of like, yes, they have these 90 million people right now, but people are wanting crossplay. Like as things progress, the ideas of walled gardens are getting smaller and smaller. Like you look at like things like Movies Anywhere, like people want to be able to watch their digital movies on any platform at any point in time, and I think that is going to begin to be a thing for video games. So I think Wargroove and Paladins eventually will be crossplay on PS4, and I think that's going to happen prior to the PS5 announcement, because I don't want any of that stuff to cloud that announcement and their plans moving forward. So that's what I think. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like that's what they're working towards.
Yeah, I could see that, like them like revealing the PS5 and like all these awesome specs, and then someone yells like, does it have crossplay? And then they'll be like, no. And then they would get shredded.
Exactly. Because that's basically what happened with Xbox when they announced, the Xbox One, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, look at this thing. It's awesome. Well, do I have to get Kinect? Yes. Well, does it have to always be online? Well, yes. Like, and then they're like, well, we don't want that, which then actually clearly turned out not to be true, because basically everything we have is always online anyway.
Yeah.
So now it just is. They just didn't tell us that it was. They just shouldn't have said anything. But anyway, so that's it. So cross-platform still there, but you're right. Not as many people are yelling about it. And I think that's because, Wargroove, for however cool of a game is, Wargroove is not going to compete with Fortnite. And same with Paladins, for however cool it is, it's still second fiddle to things like Overwatch, so these aren't the marquee games, the marquee titles. So them not having cross-play matters, but it's not making the headlines that it was if it would be, like when Fortnite didn't. So
yeah. Yep.
All right, Josh, next question for you. What do you think? Did you look at this article?
I did, yeah.
Okay, darn it. So, dear listener, then, what do you think was the number one game talked about on Twitter in 2018? Now, Fortnite would be a really excellent guess, right? Because Fortnite kind of has taken the world over. Everyone plays Fortnite except for you and me. But Fortnite seems like the obvious answer. But Fortnite is not the correct answer.
Do you know what I would have guessed?
What would you have guessed?
Star Wars Battlefront 2, because of the loot situation.
That's true. I could see that. That I could definitely see.
I couldn't escape that for 3 months on Twitter.
Right. I mean, a lot of that, though, was end of 2017.
Well, that's true. You're right. It was in 2017.
I mean, it definitely continued into 2018, but a lot of that was end of 2017. But yeah, so according to Twitter, the most talked about game on the platform is a little mobile game that we've talked about very briefly on this show.
Yeah, we have.
And that is Fate Grand Order. So if you're not totally certain, this is an RPG card battler, kind of, I guess is the best way to put it. Put out by Sony, actually. They're like a little music division that puts out games, which is a weird thing. But yeah, so that is the number one talked about or tweeted about game in 2018. Now, not surprising then, probably, when you find out that the top country talking about games in 2018 was Japan, not the United States. So I think also, that probably...
It's full of scantily clad anime girls. That's probably also a part of it.
I mean, sure, maybe. I was just going with the fact that, we tend to be a little, focused on us and the people around us. So Japan was actually the number one country tweeting about games, followed by the United States.
Gotcha.
But the top 10 games talked about on Twitter in 2018 were Fate Grand Order, Fortnite, Monster Strike, which I'm guessing is another mobile game. I have no idea what that is. Splatoon, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Grand Blue Fantasy, and Ensemble Stars, Super Smash Brothers, Overwatch, and Final Fantasy. So those were the top 10 tweeted about games in 2018. Some of those games, I have to go look up what they are because I don't know what they are.
Monster Strike, not in the US.
Okay, there we go.
So there are probably a lot of Japanese games now that you mentioned that.
So there we go. So put that in your little back pocket. Though it was interesting to note, I do believe that Fortnite was the game that was Googled the most in 2018. So they
Sure,
had
all
these.
those parents trying to figure out what their kids are talking about.
I gotta get the fork knife. I gotta get the fork knife. All right. And the final video game story we're going to talk about very briefly here is Activision announced that Call of Duty is the best-selling console franchise for the 10th year in a row.
Which is crazy.
Which is ridiculous. So, when you think about it, at first I was like, I don't understand how that can be possible because Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best-selling game of 2018. But then I remembered that, oh yeah, they had, a game that was still on sale in 27 at the beginning of 2018. Call of Duty did, rolling into the new one, henceforth the best-selling franchise. But here's my question for you, sir. What franchise is going to unseat Call of Duty? Can you even think of one? Is this title so nebulous that what franchise would unseat Call of Duty? Can you even think of one that would?
Well, the only thing I could think of this whole time you're talking is how guilty we are. How many times have we played Call of Duty?
A lot.
You played it a lot, Black Ops?
Oh, you're talking about Black Ops 4?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, okay. I've had 2 play sessions of 2.
Okay, we're a part of this problem.
We are a part of this problem. But I mean, if you think about it, our purchase only counts as one purchase, but that's 2 people playing.
That's true. So now they're selling it for $30 though, so we kind of both.
That's true. That's true. Probably should play that zombies mode to make sure I get the money's worth out of it then.
I know, right? I don't know that anything will unseat it, only because it has become that game. It's the Madden of shooters. You buy it. People buy it, not you. People buy it every year, no matter what. They just buy it. I'm not saying the game is good or bad, but they just buy it. Sometimes, Madden has years where it significantly changes, and then it has years where it adds some tweaks. And Call of Duty is very similar in you can tell the difference between a Treyarch game and an Activision game when they switch off between Black Ops and standard Call of Duty. There's varying degrees of changes in the game itself. People just buy them. They know that they're getting a new experience. They know that most of their friend groups will be playing online in the new game, not the old game. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have to go where everyone else is going. Unless we get a first-gen console, a next-gen console that doesn't launch with a Call of Duty, that might be the first year we see Call of Duty lose its streak.
Because they basically are going to have to take a year off. Unless
those dev kits come out early enough to... Yeah, they would have to take a year off for them to not trend, essentially.
And then it's probably going to be either NBA, 2K whatever, or Madden.
Yeah, or FIFA.
Or FIFA, yeah.
One of those 3 games. It'll be a sports game. Because those are the highest,
Right.
So yeah, I mean, good for them, but it's an impressive record. Wow, it's just I get frustrated for no reason because I'm like, what if it's a bad game? I get frustrated because I know it's going to sell anyways. We all were worried about Black Ops 4. We're like, it's going to be bad, and it's not. But we're like, they took out single player. It's going to be terrible. But it's good, and they kind of did put a little bit of a weird single player in there.
Right.
So, what do I know?
Oh, Call of Duty, no matter how much, it is interesting, right? Because everyone kind of bemoans Call of Duty, yet it keeps selling super well. And I had fun. I played it a week ago.
The New England Patriots of video games.
They're it is like the New England Patriots of video games. That is very, very true.
I'll take that. Yep.
So I was gonna make a really bad joke, and I'm glad I didn't. So, all right. So that's it for video game news. We will move on to our topic of the show. And we had this last weekend, as we're recording this last night, but this previous weekend we had our community gaming night where we played some Halo on Xbox. And as a brief aside, before we jump into the topic, my goodness, is there a lot of customization options in Halo? Number one.
It really takes a lot of time. And if you're just jumping in with people, you don't really have the time to do.
Yeah. Number 2, it's really bad to play Halo once a year because I forgot how everything worked. I felt okay by the end. By the end, I was doing fine. But man, those first couple games were rough.
Yep, I agree with you.
So... But as part of the very end of the evening, as things dwindled down and we kind of rolled towards the end of our time together, we were down to 4 of us, and we said, you know what? We all have this Anthem VIP beta. Let's jump in. Let's see how things are going. So the Anthem VIP beta occurred this weekend, and there were definitely some issues. BioWare, on a positive side, posted a ton of updates and very clearly communicated about what they were working through, what the issues were, how they were trying to ensure stability, the ability for folks to play in the weekend. They did a really good job, I think, as a company and as individuals on social media of saying, here's what's going on, here's how we're trying to fix it, this is what the issue is, we're aware of this problem. I thought they did a pretty solid job of that. So even though this was labeled as a beta, there were still a lot of people who were really quick to roast BioWare for their inability to play or for the issues that they were having. With another beta coming up for Anthem, The Division having an upcoming beta, Josh, what expectations should there be when it comes to playing in a beta? Should the expectations be different if you had to pay for access to that beta? And is this different than early access games, right? If you go buy a game on Steam Greenlight and it's in early access, people are like, well, you kind of can't complain. You bought a game that you knew was being in development. How does all of that work? And at the very end, then we're going to talk about how this connects to board game play testing, because I think that's an interesting parallel to draw. So to start with, sir, when you're in a beta, do you have the right to complain about stuff?
Okay. I think, well, it depends on what we're complaining about. So one of the complaints, and I don't know if we were talking about this when we were playing or if I was reading it, there's people who pre-ordered the game.
Correct. Because supposedly that's how you got into this beta.
You get the beta key, right? And then if you had EA access, you were also granted the VIP. And the expectation was that would be the only amount of people in the game. And then EA and Anthem went on Twitter and they just gave out thousands of codes for just all you have to do is tweet them and they just slid into your DMs with a code. So I did see people complaining that they thought they paid for this.
Right.
When the beta launched, it was unplayable across all platforms for the first maybe 4 hours at least. Whether you couldn't get in or it kicked you as soon as you got in, or it was glitchy, whatever the case may be, immediately their servers filled up. So people were in, but then they were crashing out. So that was the first problem. People couldn't get in. So people are complaining about overcrowding. I had a conversation with my friend about this. He said, it's a beta. This is how this works. I don't disagree with him, but I was also reminded of, and I can't remember the game, it might have been Battlefield 5. They came out and they said, this is a server stress test beta. And it was very clear, we're trying to figure out what we need our servers to be at, how big, whatever they have to figure out on their end. So they were like, the games will probably crash on you. You might not be able to get in at any points, but this is important to us to run to make sure our servers can handle. And they were like, we're going to flood our servers. We're going to get as many people in as possible. So that's something where I don't think you get to complain, because it's very clear out there, this is a server stress test. Deal with it. If it crashes, that's what this is for, and we'll fix it. So I'm a little bit on the side of the people who pre-ordered just to get the beta key. I hear their complaints, but it's still a beta. And these things happen in betas. That's the reason why things beta test. It's a different argument if you want to talk about how close to launch the beta is to the game and the problems that it has. That's a different conversation. If we're just talking about the issues with the beta, I mean, you can complain, sure, because you are expecting the best and you're not getting that. Complain away. But do you deserve to? Do you have the right to do that? Not necessarily. It's a beta, unless you're new to betas, you know what you're getting when you go into a beta. It's not the final version of a game. And in fact, they said that this was, like you said it when we were playing, this is even an earlier build than the current build. So it's even less polished than it's going to be. So was I frustrated that I didn't get to play when I set aside time to play it? Of course I was. I was like, this is time I set aside. I thought I would be able to jump in and play. Bummer. I didn't pay for this code. It just stinks. So I played Resident Evil 2 instead. Or maybe I could have done some laundry or do the dishes or go outside for a walk. There's a lot of other things I could have done. So it's unfortunate that this happened. I 100% agree with you. BioWare has been great about being transparent on their end about what's happening and what they're trying to do to fix it. That's what they need to do, like real bad. So they did it. Good for them. Because it could have been a disaster if they didn't say anything. It could have been like another Fallout 76 situation where they got bashed and dragged on Twitter for a month. And now they have next weekend coming up, tomorrow, if you're listening on Thursday, where you have an open beta for everyone.
Right.
And then they have, you mentioned early access. They have the EA Access early access, which will be 10-hour trial, 10 days before the game comes out. It's not quite like the Steam early access. I've played some games on Steam early access, and yeah, you're paying money for a game that is definitely not done.
Right.
But you're also paying for it. It's like PUBG. People still complained, but it was early access.
Right.
You if you don't understand what you're buying because it wasn't clear to you what you were buying, that's on the publisher. If you're upset after buying something and you knew what you were buying, that's on you. You don't get to complain.
That makes sense. I think the question, though, is it seems pretty evident or clear that some people didn't assume this was a beta, right?
They thought it was a VIP demo.
I think that's
which is what it was labeled.
Oh, was it a VIP demo? Okay.
Yeah.
I think probably calling it a demo was a bad thing. They probably should have stuck with beta. I always just thought it was a beta. I didn't realize it was considered a demo. Because I think what has happened is that a lot of things that have been called betas in the past were demos of the game.
Yeah, essentially full versions of the game
right.
that you could just try out.
Right, which meant they were pretty polished, like everything was kind of what you were going to be experiencing at the end, whereas this clearly is not that. So I think the fact that they called it the VIP demo was probably bad. They probably should have stuck with beta test or something like that to be very clear that we're going to be figuring some stuff out with this. And I think that's good, right? It's good that they're doing this now so that when the game comes out on the 22nd of February, hopefully everything is smooth as butter. Am I anticipating that's going to be? No. I'm sure they'll probably still have issues. You know, most new versions of games or have issues when they first launch when they're very online focused, right? Back in the day, Call of Duty, every time Call of Duty came out, it just would buckle every night when it got released. You know, you'd go to your midnight launch, come back and not be able to play. You know, that's the way it went. You know, Destiny struggled right away. Destiny 2, they were very clear about the fact of like, we're going to let people in slowly. Like if you try to play right away, it's going to take time, you know, and they eventually got everyone in and it was fine. But those are the kind of things that often have to be done. So I think that actual true betas so rarely happen anymore that when you actually do one, people are like, what the heck is this? I thought I was playing a demo. And probably calling it the VIP demo, again, was not a good idea.
So I'm on your, like, I knew it was called the VIP demo, but I didn't know to the extent. So maybe I'm a little bit more on their side. Because if you go to EA.com right now, the first thing that pops up is it shows the 4 javelins flying on the main page.
Right
Smack dab in the middle of the page. Pre-order Anthem. Okay, all caps, big letters. Then it says, get access to the VIP demo and be among the first to get hands-on with Anthem when you pre-order.
Right, which actually is over now.
Yeah, and then there's the pre-order now button. So it is a little misleading.
No, I would agree there. I always thought of it as a beta, and maybe that's just because of where I read it stuff about. Like I never thought of it as, and I think when you boot it, doesn't it say beta?
I don't recall now that you say that.
I feel like the title card has like, it says like beta across the top. I could be wrong. Maybe it says demo.
Might say that.
And maybe it says demo. I don't even know.
Who knows?
I'll be very interested because we played it.
Yes.
We had a good time playing together.
Yeah, it was great.
You didn't like playing by yourself.
I liked it, but
you didn't like it as much.
There's a hollow world, like for people wise, and even like I'm only comparing it to Destiny,
right?
But not because I want to, but because it's the only other thing that I played that's similar to it,
right?
And it's a huge wide open world, and there's not a lot going on. I land in Destiny, and people are already shooting around me.
Right.
Like there's a lot going on in this world right now because it is a beta. It could totally be different.
Right.
And you also start in the middle of the game. It might be totally different, but it feels a little lonely when you're playing solo,
Right.
and that's totally different than Destiny or even the Division.
Right. And I think, they have said it was going to be,
Yeah.
it's not. And that's why, there's a lot of people who are out there who are being very clear of like, this isn't their take on Destiny. It's not
Yeah.
a shared world shooter. Like whenever you go into instances, it's not going to be a whole bunch of other random people there, but I can understand that. Like the world is cool. Like I thought it was fun to fly around. I thought the flying was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But there was definitely, I remember the one time that we went underwater, I was like, I have no idea where I'm going.
That was very confusing.
That was very confusing. I had no idea which way was up or which way was down. I had no clue. That was a little rough.
Yeah.
But so do you think now that, because the Division has a beta coming up as well, right?
Yeah, I think the first week of March.
Do you think they're like, obviously it's after Anthem comes out, but do you think they're like licking their chops being like, oh man, maybe we should move ours to before the Anthem? Because we know ours is solid. Like we know it's going to be good.
That would be smart if they put out their beta before Anthem came out.
Like the weekend
they
before.
Change that date. That would be brilliant on their part. They won't, but that would be brilliant if they did.
There's probably a lot of things that they would have to do differently. But I'm wondering if they saw the performance of Anthem and were like, oh, we could get these people.
Yeah, they really could.
So
there's got to be more than just me thinking between Anthem and Division 2.
Because they're both games that, like, even if they're different, and I think they're going to be drastically different in how the worlds and the feel and all of that stuff, like, they're both, it's not so much about the type of game, it's about the number of hours you're going to spend playing the game and how you play the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, we'll be interested to see kind of how that works. So, have you ever play tested a board game?
I haven't. I've had a couple opportunities to apply for it, and I just I cowered in the corner instead of getting some courage and going ahead with it.
So I've play tested board games before, and I think the thing when it comes to play testing board games that's interesting is that, and folks may not know how this works, is basically you sign up or whatever, and then you basically get, either through Dropbox or whatever, you get a boatload of files that you are then responsible for printing yourself, putting like on a card stock, or like gluing them onto playing cards is often what I'll do. I'll buy a cheap deck of playing cards and then cut them out and glue the thing on. But like, you might have to like scrounge dice and markers from like other games and like little pieces and stuff to like kind of put everything out. And then like have this paper board that like I'll often put on like a piece of cardboard or something to give it a little more durability and a little more structure to it and things like that. But like you're kind of assembling this game and then getting a rule book that often is mostly finished, like not totally finished. It's usually mostly finished. And there are some parts that are like, hey, we're still trying to figure out exactly how this is going to work, or here's a clarifier for this, but there's almost never any art in it or anything like that. Like it's just like, laid out for the right pages, and you have to print that out and like staple it together and do all that stuff, and then you're playing the game and then you're given your feedback and you're like, oh, here's who it was. And when you give feedback, it's not like, I wish this had happened, or you should do this to fix the game, because that's not what they're looking for. It's here's the characters I used. Here's what the score was. I liked being able to do this. It was frustrating when this happened, because you're not telling them how to fix it. You're telling them what you liked and didn't like. Right. And I think that's the important difference, right? In my mind, I see like playtesting board games a lot like the Anthem beta test, but I don't have to give the feedback because they have all the things and computers and things like that can tell what all the problems are, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because usually when it comes to like playtesting board games, people are like, oh, I get to playtest a board game. This is so cool. I get to be one of the first people to play it. This is really awesome. Like I'm not allowed to talk about it, but this is really cool. And then when people like getting betas for video games, I feel like they just complain about them.
Yes. Well, I would say there is. So if you do a closed beta or an alpha, that's more like playtesting a board game, because I've participated in closed ones that they do survey you afterwards.
Right. As have I.
Yeah. And even like the Assassin's Creed Project Stream, Steam Project Stream, that was very similar. So I think maybe you're right. Maybe we should be changing the like vernacular on what betas are. So they should call it like demo.
Well, but it should be a demo if it's a demo, right?
If it's a demo, it should be. Yes, you're absolutely right. So if it's a beta, they should be at some level gathering data
And telling you that this might be broken.
and maybe don't release it 3 weeks before your game releases
True.
or the day before your game goes gold.
Right.
Because Anthem went gold the day after Anthem demo dropped.
Right.
So it's not a beta because the game is done. It's done. They're not even, it's gold. They're not even tweaking it anymore.
Well, no, they're still tweaking it, right?
Well, they'll tweak it on a system level, but the disc itself is
well, right. There's going to be a day one patch that's potentially going to
God, I
be
hope
huge. Oh, there's totally going to be a day one patch. You know
we
there
need to move
is.
past that too.
No,
So
we
maybe
don't.
put your beta out 2 months earlier, and then maybe less day one patches.
Well, but there's number one, there's gonna be a day one patch no matter what. Number two,
Yeah.
if the game had gone gold and they're only got like whatever's pressed on the disc is the only thing that you're gonna play, what is the team gonna do until release?
Oh, they can work on the expansion. Or all the javelins we don't get for free with the next level of DLC.
Yeah, okay. But I do think that, I think their messaging beforehand could have been a little clearer, obviously, because some people clearly were not in the same boat that I was. Like, I knew that this was an old version of the game. Like, I knew that this was, I think they did a blog post about like, here are all the things that are different about this build compared to the final build. And it's some really significant stuff, like drastically different things about like how customizations work, the weapons that you're getting, the balancing of those weapons, like all of that stuff. So, I think that potentially how they talked about it ahead of time might have been changed, but also like part of me is like, well, if you're tuned in at all to like any of their Twitch streams, like when they were playing this game on Twitch, starting back in November or whatever, like they were like, hey, this is, similar to the build you'll be playing in the beta. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. There was at one point, like I remember very distinctly when they were playing on Twitch, that all their weapons, like as you get like uncommons and hires, like they have modifiers on the weapon, so it'll give you like plus 10% like shield regen or something like that.
Yeah.
All of them, I think, like every single one of them said 0. So it'd be like 0% shield regen, 0% power improvement, like all of those things said 0. And the thing was, in the game, it wasn't giving you 0%. It just was a glitch like on the description of the weapon itself.
Yeah.
So it was funny. They're like, oh, there's another glitch. Like that won't be that way when the game ships, but it might be in the beta that way. Like, I think part of it is like how tuned in you were. Maybe that's why my expectations were just totally different. Of like, I played it for a couple hours. It was fun. It was cool. But like when I didn't, because I wasn't able to get in until late Saturday night. Like that was the first time, because I was one of those people who got the infinite loading screen. I was like, yeah, doesn't work. That's fine. I'm sure they'll fix it eventually. Like, I also didn't pay or pre-order the game, so maybe that's why I care less. That's very possible.
Yeah.
So what I think we've decided is that if you are having a beta, make sure you are clear that it is a beta and it might be broken. And if you're really just having a demo for your game, don't call it a beta, just call it a demo.
Yes. Be clear.
Right.
Game companies.
Clear. All right. So that's it for that. But hey, you know what? We do have a few listener questions. So Josh, why don't you cover those wonderful questions we got from the wonderful listeners?
Well, we do have one person who has multiple questions. So Splig at Dobelicious on Twitter says, which has more potential to translate to a decent movie, board games? Oh, geez, to a decent movie, board games or video games? I should put in my own punctuation so I know where to stop. So that's the first question. He follows up with, which has more to lose / gain in doing so? And he says, I feel like you're much more invested in the video game story, so there's more opportunities for disappointment. So what do you think? More potential to translate into a decent movie, video games or board games? And who has more to lose?
Well,
or gain?
I mean, I think the question has to be right now. I feel like the people who have more to gain is video games, because everyone just assumes every video game movie is going to suck.
Yes.
So if it's good, there's a lot to gain there. But if it's bad, it's like no harm, no foul, right? It just wasn't going to be good anyway because it's a video game movie.
Yeah, you're right. They don't have much to lose.
Right. You know, like there's really very, very few video game movies that are
Good. Yeah.
Even good, you know, like, or fine, you know, that are even just
Possible.
fine. So I do think there haven't been very many board game movies, right? Like Battleship,
Clue,
Clue,
which is excellent.
Clue, which is very, very good. I mean, depending on how you look at it, Jumanji.
Jumanji, yeah, I would count that. And then I would count Zathura,
Oh, yes.
which was good. Jumanji was good. I didn't
Yep.
see Tumanji. Did you see Tumanji?
I did see Jumanji.
Oh, was it good?
It was fun.
Okay.
It was,
See, okay.
It was fun. You know, so we do have a Catan movie theoretically coming in the future.
Uh-huh.
So there's that option. I think honestly, though, it seems because like there's a Tetris movie, I think that's in the works.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening with that.
Yeah, but
they'll
I think
probably all be better than the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I think, you know, I will say though, Detective Pikachu looks promising.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Detective Pikachu looks potentially promising here.
Uh-huh.
You know, so I think overall, I feel like you could probably take a board game and make a movie out of it. I want to say easier because there's less concrete thoughts about exactly how that movie should be, right? When you have video games, most video games have a protagonist who looks a certain way, who sounds a certain way. There's a story that's already been told there. Like there's very specific things in that universe that then it becomes, okay, is the movie tied to that very specifically and rigidly? Is it an homage to what it's doing? Is it only inspired by the video game? But then you're going to have people upset by how that works. Whereas with a board game, it's a general feel most of the time. Like there are games that are very thematic, but overall, like if you did a Dead of Winter movie, like you better have a Sparky, but you could have a lot more flexibility in like the way characters acted and how they sounded and who played those roles and how they interacted with one another. You don't have that forgiveness as much in a video game world because there's been an interactive medium about them already. And there's a huge group of board games that could likely be made into really solid, probably movies that haven't. And that's a lot of those horror games, right? Betrayal at House on the Hill and things like that, that you could really make into very cool movies likely, but just haven't been done yet.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when we talk about potential to translate, I think you're right with the board game part because there's so much more leniency, but I think it's easier to make a video game movie because there's less of a creative process because they're already taking an established like story and character. They don't have to do as much like critical thinking and like original idea stuff to come up. Like if you said make a Ticket to Ride movie, they could be like, okay, we have so many ways we can go with this. And if you say make a Max Payne movie, you're like, okay, I know I have to tell this story of why he is how he is. That's already told in the video game. I know he has to look like this character. I know these are the beats it has to hit, at least for the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's less creativity in that project over what is already established.
Right.
But in a board game, you have so much potential because, well, one, it's less mainstream, so people aren't as familiar
right
with the titles, and unless you're talking about like even like a game like Pandemic, there's a lot you could do with that theme without having to follow a strict. I think until you get into games like Mice and Mystics, maybe, and like Stuffed Fables that have a specific narrative,
right?
I think you have a lot more creative freedom over the licensing.
But doesn't that also probably theoretically lead to what is going to be a better movie, right? Like, don't we always say about like, oh, if you just give directors free reign to do what they want, to follow their vision, to do these things.
The right directors. Yeah, but the question is potential. So I think potentially the potential is more with board games than video games.
Right. Yeah. If you could, I know we've talked about, we did our pitches for the Catan movie, like way back, like an early episode. We gave our Catan pitch, but is there a board game maybe out of left field that you think would make a really excellent movie?
I mean, I look at Pandemic and I'm like, there's already like 4 movies that are the Pandemic movie.
Outbreak.
Like you could just change the name of it.
Right.
Yeah. Or the one with Matt Damon. I'm forgetting the name of it. Shoot. Anyways, I'm not remembering it, but I'll remember it later and Scream, or I'll look it up later when you're talking. I don't know. Clank would be a cool like dungeon crawler movie.
It would be
Something like that you can do, or Mansions of Madness, but just call it Mansion of Madness.
Yeah.
There's some potential there. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like outside the box a little bit about what would be that's not like super mainstream.
Cat Lady?
What one?
Cat Lady
Oh,
by AEG.
yeah, right. I'm actually I kept looking at your shelf while you were talking.
Are you?
See, yeah, I kept thinking of like what would be a good thing to do. But I think okay, speaking like from outside the box, like making like Spyfall into a movie.
Okay.
Right, where like you have a group of people and like they're aware that there's a spy among them, but they're trying to figure out like who that is.
Yeah.
Like that, just the broadest, like very high level, and just starting with that as the conceit to the movie. Like I think you could do some cool things, and how they figured that out.
Two spies.
Two twist. That's the plot twist. That's the Shyamalan twist.
The butler was the spy.
That is the Shyamalan twist at the end. But even like, and I think part of it is like, if you think of a lot of movies that exist, like there's board games that have a similar theme that you could be like, well, that clearly could just be a, like is Days of Thunder just a Downforce movie?
Yeah, you could like really paste the theme over most stuff.
Right.
Like
and I think that's why probably it seems like it quote unquote has the most potential, because there's been really good movies in almost every genre, and there's board games in just about every genre.
There you go. Yeah.
So, all right. Any other thoughts on Splig's question, sir?
No, I think it was a great question. So thank you, Splig.
That was an excellent question. I agree. All right, folks. Well, clearly we are a gaming podcast, but we want to give you one recommendation, suggestion, thing that we're into that's helping us live a well-rounded life. That is correct. Just something that, hey, when we're taking a break from gaming, what's kind of occupying our thoughts and or our time. So Josh, what is your recommendation for a well-rounded life to our dear listeners?
So I had thought of one earlier and I didn't write it down, and it was really good. And I don't remember what it was, but I was like, I don't want to do a Netflix thing this week because we keep doing TV shows. So I was thinking I'll use what we did tonight. And that is be adventurous and cook something you've never cooked before.
Ooh, what did you cook tonight?
We did. It was the first time I did it. I think people do it a lot. I actually found a recipe for pan chicken. Have you had just pan chicken? Does that sound right? Like a cooking pan? You just put it like chicken breast. And so it's baby potatoes quartered and chicken breast. You just literally throw them on a baking pan.
Oh, okay. I usually refer to those as like sheet meals.
Okay, so yeah, okay, all right. And then so we made up the recipe, and it was like 2 lemons squeezed, and then some oregano and some garlic powder, and you mix it up and make a covering. And we popped it in, and I'm always skeptical about cooking chicken.
Why?
Because Ashley looks at totally different than I do.
Okay.
She's always afraid it's undercooked. I'm always afraid it's going to be overcooked.
Right.
We try to find common ground.
Do you use a thermometer?
Yes. So we made sure on this recipe, use a thermometer. So we use a thermometer. We pull the chicken out. Looks good. I cut mine into it. It's like just cooked. It's still like the texture of this chicken is like soggy. Going back to the soggy bottoms. She takes a bite into her potato. It's all lemon. The whole potato tastes like lemon. Every piece of potato in there, just pure lemon. So the recipe we got was not a very good recipe, but we stepped out of our comfort zone. We tried a new recipe, and we know that we won't do that one again, or we'll tweak it.
That's true. That's good.
Try something. And if you're not a cooking person, like my wife got an Instapot, but the crock pot version of it for Christmas. And we've been using that, and I absolutely love it. So try cooking in a different way, try a new recipe, get a recipe from a friend, something like that. Just do something that you wouldn't normally do.
And I'm someone who loves cooking, like obviously because I talk about food, I think
Me too.
often at the beginning of the show. And I actually got an Instant Pot for Christmas, but I haven't used it yet. But
Oh, I love it so much.
I know I've heard great things. But the wife and I, we actually made a commitment that for the month of February, we are not going to eat out at all.
Nice. That's a good plan.
Yeah. So that way it's going to kind of, because, we both work and we come home and we're like, oh, we're both really tired. But we're like, wow, we could just pick something up, or I could pick something up on my way home. It's just way easier, right? But, I really like to cook. So I think if I know what I'm going to make and I'm looking forward to something, like I'm really excited about it. But I have a really solid skirt steak sheet recipe that I'm happy to forward to you if you'd like. It's very, very good.
Nice. That sounds good. And that Matt Damon movie was Contagion.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that movie.
I love that movie.
I was trying to think of I'm trying to picture Matt Damon in any movie like that, and I completely forgot about that movie.
And he gives his daughter prom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's one. That could totally be called Pandemic, the movie. Okay, that's my well-rounded life tip. Kyle, what is yours?
So I'm going to change mine because we were talking about food, so I'm going to change mine to a food thing. So if you're like me and you live in a cold climate, like it is actually snowing as I speak. We've gotten a ton of snow. It's actually supposed to be in the mid 50s below on Wednesday and Thursday this week, like record-setting cold. Yeah, like 50 below.
Snow.
What?
You still get snow when it's 50 below.
Well, it's not 50 below right now. It's like 3 or 4 below right now, and it's snowing. But like Wednesday and Thursday this week, they've already said like we're supposed to get like record low temperatures, like 50 below, which I lived in North Dakota for a while. So like I've experienced 50 below before. It sucks. What's that?
You can't function. You can't leave the house, right?
No, it's horrible. It's horrendous. It's really bad. Like you go outside and like your lungs burn when you breathe. It's really rough. Yeah. But one of my favorite things to do though, in general, is grill. I love to grill. It's like if I could prepare all my food on the grill, I would. I just love to do it. There's something about it that I just really like when it comes to cooking. So if you are like me and you live in a really cold climate that sometimes makes grilling outside very hard, my tip for a well-rounded life is don't stop having those, burgers on the grill and all of those things that you would typically have. Because remember, your broiler is just an upside down grill.
Yes.
So
I used to cook on my broiler.
Yes. So remember that, fair person. If you are stuck in a wintry climate, yearning for some of those wonderful summer foods that you typically have on the grill, just remember your broiler, if you have the traditional broiler of how they are made in most ovens today, is just an upside down grill. So put that broiler on, cook things in your oven like you are grilling them, and you can have a wonderful burger, corn on the cob that is on the grill, any of those things, a good steak, all that stuff. You can still grill. Just use your broiler. It's great.
Nice.
So with that, Josh, what do you say we wrap this show up?
Seems like it's a good time to do that. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, you can find us on social media at BoredWithVG. Use that hashtag BoredWithVG. You can see Paul's giant yard of beer that he shared with everybody. Facebook.com/BoredWithVG. I don't know how you bowl after drinking that much beer. And BoredWithVG@gmail.com. You can find me on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network at Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. And I play Switch games and I have Switch code.
Excellent.
That's it.
Okay. Well, you can find me at all the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media, because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.